Subdominant chords, what are they? Do they exist? Are we allowed to play them? Find out maybe in this video. Okay, so let's take a familiar jazz example, which is the 2-5-1, right? D minor 7, G7 something, C major, blah. Okay, right. So we're interested in that first chord for this lesson, which is the 2 chord, 2 minor 7 in this case. Functionally, that's often described as a subdominant or predominant chord. The function of that chord is to set up the dominant, which is where all the fun, crazy, chromatic stuff happens sometimes. And then you go into the tonic chord, which is the release, the conclusion of the crazy story that you might tell on the dominant chord. I want to talk a little bit today about things that I think people miss, okay? So, first of all, I think we tend to think about bass notes or root notes, as it usually is for modern jazz, kind of too much. And I think really if we actually look at the top bit of these chords, for instance, you might see there that they are both F triads. We can start to unlock some links between these things, and that might lead us to think about playing lines and voicings differently. At least it did for me. So bear with me. I'm going somewhere with this. So F major over D. Well, in fact, actually, as it turns out, for a lot of traditional common practice harmony, it's quite common to put this is an F6, by the way, if you don't know this grip, to put an F6 on the sort of 4th degree of the key, and then go to 5 and then resolve it to 1. This is quite common, okay? So this sort of sound is very common on 4, And this, as any Barry Harris student will tell you, is an inversion of D minor 7. F6 and D minor 7 are the same thing. So right away we can think like, well, okay, 2 minor 7, 4, 6. They're kind of the same thing. And this is something indeed that Barry Harris used to teach. Okay? Something else he used to teach is this. Oh, what's that? The G bass. Well, that is a G sus chord. Then we move to this is a 7 flat 9, and then C major. This chord here becomes G sus, just an F6 over a G bass. Okay, so this is useful because it teaches us something about predominant subdominant chords, that they are essentially suspensions. What's meant by a suspension? Well, in the simplest version of harmony, you might have a 5-1 going like this, for instance. Okay, a suspension, what it does is it kind of takes a bit of the chord over into the next one. For instance, you do it here, and then resolve it on the last chord. Now, for a dominant, what that means is we kind of have a bit left over, sometimes maybe from the 1 chord. So if I go into a 5 chord, but I kind of keep the C, and then move it down to the B, you have that sound, which is probably quite familiar. Okay, this is going back to like the Renaissance era. Okay, so eventually, like with more complicated bass lines, this movement, which I think we can really define as this, became, more and more elaborate. So kind of thing. But it's very classical, right? Or you could, go 2-5-1, which is more familiar to us jazzers. The same sort of thing. Okay? Or you could just, do it as a suspension, just do it over the G, right? But the voice feeding in each case was the same. Yeah? And it resolves down to the unison. This is something which we don't necessarily think about too much in jazz, but the extension of that principle is still the same. What we can play on an F chord also works on a D minor 7 or a G sus. release that into a whatever kind of dominant chord we prefer. And then eventually resolve that to a C major. So I think that's a really important thing. In Barry Harris circles, it's common to build the major sixth diminished chord on top of the minor seventh. So for instance, if it's a D minor seventh, you build a F major sixth diminished. Over the top of that D minor 7, right? And you'd have fun, playing around with that. Now, we can also extend it up to, for instance, a major 7th or a major 9th or whatever we like, and that's something you often hear in Charlie Parker's music, for instance. I'm playing F major 7th over D minor 7 there. And then sort of kind of resolution down as a note of C major 9th in that case, or this kind of thing. But notice that I have prepared the D minor with some kind of F major 7th sound, and I like to do that a lot. This is something that I use an awful lot. That sound is also present in what Barry Harris called the G dominant scale as part of that, so any note from the G dominant scale will do. But I'm kind of thinking about it from an F major perspective. Then, to get into the tonic chord, it's a matter of just changing a few notes. Like that, for instance, which is just flattening a couple of notes. In this case, going from an F major 7th to an E/F, or, what might be an F diminished major 7th or a G13 flat 9. I don't know. I just went down 2 notes. Okay, and it sounds cool. Both of those notes, by the way, are present in the major 6th diminished scale, the C major 6th diminished scale, right? So that's one thing. I want to move on to minor. It's the same principle. We're going to build that F minor 6th. And then we can flatten one note and get to the F diminished 7th. And then from there to the whatever version of C major, C minor we prefer, right? Okay, very similar. And again, I'll take you through. So we've just realised that the F minor 6th is related to D half diminished, and that's related to this rather lush, it's a G7 sus4 flat 9 chord. Or if you prefer an F minor triad over G. And we can then, if we want to, extend that into the, Barry Harris diminished scales, whatever. Or we can use, melodic minor. And again, I'm sort of voice leading that into this sort of chord here, which in this case is a E flat major 7 sharp 5, which also happens to build the structure of a James Bond chord, C minor major 9th, for instance. So that stuff can be very rich. But really, what I'm interested in is this, and again, it's like it comes from Renaissance and Baroque music, really, originally. But we extend this principle out into jazz. So we're playing, like, for instance, F minor major 7th. Take 2 notes down. And then into C minor, if you prefer. Okay? So this is a really rich vein of ideas, and you could do worse than just playing like extended chords on the 4. Whatever it is you like to do. But again, same principle on the sus. Anyway, I hope you find that useful and interesting. I've gone a long way with that technique for my own playing. Just to be able to unite these different forms. I think it's a powerful, simple but powerful technique for coming up with lines, and it also helps understand the way in which sus chords and 4 chords relate to 2 chords, and hopefully you'll start to see how a whole bunch of apparently different chord progressions are related in some way. Anyway, thanks for watching.